Dietrich's Ghosts is the new Army box set designed to work with the Iron Cross book for Flames of War. It's aimed at getting a German player started in mid-war version 4 on the Eastern Front. I have to give a big thank you to Blitz Peaces for supplying this box for review. Be sure to check out their online store in the links below. They're also offering Fog of War viewers a discount code on version 4 Flames of War products, so you can grab a bargain as well. More details on that later. Let's look at what's in the box. As a starter set, there are a number of different units here. Dietrich's Ghosts has 3 Panzer IIIs, 3 Panzer IVs, and 4 10.5cm howitzers. These are all in plastic. The box set also contains 2 Tank Commander sprues, 2 decal sheets, and 11 unit cards. The artillery gun crews are metal figures. It has a mini Flames of War version 4 softcover rulebook as well. Designed to get new players started in Flames of War, this box is also a good way for an existing player to kickstart a new army. So do the units in this box set make the basis of a useful force? Let's have a think about how you might use it. The tanks lend themselves to different options depending on your preferences and playstyle. Let's look at the plastic while we consider what you can do here. Panzer IIIs were effective against the lighter Soviet armour early in Barbarossa. However, they started to lack adequate protection against heavier guns on enemy tanks later in the campaign. This Panzer III kit is the same plastic you'd find in the existing Afrika Korps range. It's moulded in mustard yellow-green plastic. Parts are well cast and detailed, and this goes together quickly without significant issues. Options on the sprue include the long and short 5cm guns, as well as the stubby 7.5cm for the Panzer IIIN. There are also add-on armour options for the hull and mantlet for the spaced armour of the long 5cm Panzer IIIL, but no hull or turret shirts are supplied. If we check out the 5 Panzer III unit cards that come in the box, there's a HQ and 2 unit cards for standard Panzer IIIs. The mixed card has the armour stats for all the guns and both the standard and up-armoured tanks. The other 2 cards are the HQ and unit card for up-armoured Panzer IIIs, and only show the long 5cm gun stats and increased armour values. This gives you plenty of options to mix and match different Panzer III types depending on the force you're aiming for. Designed during the 1930s, the Panzer III was intended to be the main medium tank for German armoured formations. Armed with an anti-tank gun and armour-piercing ammunition, its primary role was to destroy enemy armour. Initially armed with a 37mm gun, later the 5cm and long 5cm guns were fitted to cope with the increasing armour thickness of enemy vehicles. Panzer III was a design that set many of the benchmarks for modern tank design. It had a 3-man turret in a time when many armies were still forcing the tank commander to act as loader or even gunner. For the time it was well-armed, well-armoured and reliable, the ideal spearhead for Germany's blitzkrieg concept of fast-paced armoured warfare. But the turret ring of this compact design was too small to accept the larger guns that were required to deal with tanks like the Soviet KV series and the T-34 that started appearing on the battlefield. This limited further development of the design. This meant the anti-tank role passed on to the Panzer IV. Initially designed with a low-velocity 7.5cm howitzer to deal with enemy guns, strongpoints and troops, Panzer IV was a larger tank and could more easily be adapted to carry bigger guns. Fitting the long 7.5cm guns to these tanks gave the German army the firepower needed to deal with increasingly capable opponents. If we look at the Panzer IV sprue, we can see this kit also has options. Moulded in the same mustard-coloured plastic, the Panzer IV is also a nice straightforward build. The sprue includes the low-velocity 7.5cm gun for using the Panzer IV in the support role, complementing the Panzer III's anti-tank capability. If you're building Panzer III gun tanks, you might want the howitzer-armed Panzer IVs in support against guns and infantry. Later in the Barbarossa campaign, the Panzer IV's armament switched to the anti-tank role, with the longer high-velocity 7.5cm anti-tank cannon. There are 2 gun options on the sprue here. The rounded single-baffle muzzle brake was used on the Panzer IV F2, the first version to field a long anti-tank gun. The double-baffle muzzle brake is for all marks after the F2. It's the same 7.5cm anti-tank gun with the same stats in the game, just with a redesigned brake. The difference is purely cosmetic, but nice to have both options on the sprue for flavour. So depending on what you need, there's a number of different mixes of tanks you can build from this box. If you want a force from the early days of the invasion of the Soviet Union, you might opt for gun-armed Panzer IIIs with howitzer-armed Panzer IVs in support. These are useful as artillery support against infantry and guns, as well as providing useful tactical smokescreens. Another option is a force from later in the war. This might use Panzer IVs with long 7.5cm guns as the main anti-armour punch, either backed up by gun variants of the Panzer III or taking the Panzer III and howitzer-armed option. Again, the howitzer is useful against infantry and guns and can generate protective smoke. Of course, you might opt for building the Panzer IIIN because these were the support tanks in heavy panzer units escorting Tigers, if that's an option when you expand your force. The Panzer IIIN certainly aren't helpless against enemy armour. The short 7.5cm gun gets access to one of the first heat rounds in widespread use, giving it a lot of punch, particularly at longer range. The box set rounds out the units with artillery. While not a great anti-tank gun, the 10.5cm light field howitzer 18 gives the player options for dealing with Soviet infantry, something a German knows his Soviet opponent can usually muster plenty of. The 10.5cm artillery battery also fires smoke bombardments as well as direct fire smoke. Again, this is useful for screening enemy fire, or the movement of your own forces on the tabletop. Here's the sprue in beige plastic. There are options for building guns with or without muzzle brakes. Again, this is a cosmetic difference. It makes no difference to their performance in the game. There are also two wheel options on the sprue. The metal wheels with rubber tyres were designed for motorised transport. The wooden spoked wheels from the earlier Model 16 carriage were used later in the war as materials became scarce. Developed in the 1920s, the 10.5cm light field howitzer 18 was a heavier calibre than many field artillery in World War II. Crews were protected by a gun shield. A modern design with a split trail carriage, it was a heavy gun to pull or tow. Much of Germany's artillery remained horse-drawn throughout the war, which had a hard time dragging this gun through the mud and snow in Russia. Where they were available, motorised units made use of half-tracked artillery prime movers to tow the guns. I had worried about the choice of artillery instead of anti-tank guns in the box set, but the anti-tank role is already covered adequately by the tanks. The artillery gives the German player some more options to deal with different types of opposing units like infantry, mortars and guns, particularly if all the tanks are fielded as anti-tank variants. So there's a balance of capability here, but what about points? If we look at the Iron Cross formation on Forces of War, I'm going to make a Panzer IV formation. The formation HQ is 1 or 2 tanks. I'll take one. I'll upgrade it to the long 7.5cm gun for an additional 4 points. Let's save that and go back. Next I'll fill the compulsory Panzer IV tank platoon. The minimum number of Panzer IVs in a platoon is 2, so we have just enough tanks in the set. The Panzer IV short 7.5s are 6 points each. These can be upgraded to long 7.5s for plus 4 points per tank. Mixed long and short gun units are okay. I'm taking the option for the long 7.5cm guns here for these to fill the anti-tank role. You could stick with the shorter 7.5 if you wanted to. Let's save this and go back to the formation. Next I'm going to take Panzer IIIs as another tank platoon in the formation. You get options for standard, up-armoured or mixed Panzer III platoons. This is a non-compulsory platoon. Panzer III short 5cm tanks are 5 points each. These can be upgraded to long 5cm guns for 2 points each. Again, mixed units are okay. Additionally, the long 5cm Panzer III can be up-armoured for an additional point each, taking the front armour value to 6 at a total cost of 8 points per tank. I've taken these as a platoon in a Panzer IV formation rather than fielding a Panzer III formation because their platoons are a minimum of 3 tanks and require 2 compulsory platoons. The box set doesn't give you enough to field a Panzer III formation. You would need 1 or 2 tanks for the HQ and 3 to 5 tanks per platoon, so you would need at least 4 additional Panzer IIIs to field a minimum formation. Now let's add the artillery. 10.5cm howitzers are 3.5 points each, with batteries of 2 or 4 guns at 7 and 14 points respectively. If you think about your likely opponents on the Eastern Front, including the artillery makes a lot of sense. Soviet players get some great tanks, but they also tend to have lots of infantry and guns. You need ways to deal with these on the table. If we package this all up as a valid formation on Forces of War, we get a 59-point formation with a Panzer IV HQ, a Panzer IV platoon, a Panzer III platoon, and the 4 10.5cm artillery pieces. 47 points if you take short guns on the Panzer IVs. Where can you go from here? You'll probably need at least one more box of tanks, either Panzer IIIs or IVs, depending on what formation you want to build. This would allow you to round out some of the platoons in the force. Infantry is also a solid option that this formation can take as support. German tactics emphasise combined arms, and some Panzer Grenadiers in half-tracks ready to rumble forward and assault will give you stronger ability to both defend and take objectives. If you build some of your Panzer IIIs as ends, you might want to use them as escorts for some Tigers in a Tiger heavy tank platoon. These are always a popular option with German players. Another useful option would be Stugs, as either howitzer-armed infantry support guns or with 7.5cm long guns for more anti-tank firepower. 5cm or 7.5cm pack anti-tank guns are another anti-tank option to consider. Keeping with the combined arms theme, Stukas for close air support were an integral part of German doctrine. Other options are reconnaissance units, Nebelwerfers or AA options, including the 8.8cm flak heavy AA platoon. Lots of goodies. So I think the box set is a well thought out starter for Eastern Front German players. Out of the box you can field a valid Panzer IV formation. The tanks and guns are flexible and can be fielded in a number of different configurations to suit particular time periods during mid-war or your own playstyle. The plastic kits are all well detailed and of the great quality we expect from battlefront kits these days. You will need to buy some more Panzer IIIs to build a valid Panzer III formation, or use these to support some Tigers. There really are a whole heap of options for expanding your force, again depending on what you want to have in your army. This is great value. Thanks again to Blitz Peaces for supplying this box set. Their generous support helps make sure this channel can review a range of products, without me having to buy them all out of my own pocket. I said earlier that Blitz Peaces were offering Fog of War viewers a 10% discount on eligible Flames of War version 4 kits. If you enter the code Fog of War 2019 Q1 during checkout, the discount will be applied to your order. The code is valid from January 15th to March 31st, 2019. If you need some gear, please repay their generous support of this channel by making a purchase.